Hi, Sandy.
Hi, it's Dave, and no, there is no Kirk today. Kirk has got some technical difficulties and is unable to join us on today's video. But we are the A.D.K, well, the AD channel today. And thank you for joining us. Normally we'd be doing a video review today, but there was a topic that just came out. It was on actually Yahoo. Weirdly, it's in the Yahoo Sports section, which is really weird, probably why no one's read it. And it's talking about grassroots music venues, and I thought it'd be quite a good topic to talk about. So it's all about tax relief expires. So at the moment, UK music venues were during the due to COVID during 2020 were getting tax relief, which basically meant that they were not really having to pay any taxes or very low taxes. They were getting support. And that's coming to an end, which means venues have obviously got to now start paying higher taxes, and that is having a direct impact. And in the last annual year, we have seen a 15% of grassroots venues in the UK have closed, which is 125 venues, and it looks to be a similar number in the following year is what's looking like going to happen. And I'm just curious about what do we think about this whole thing. Yes, 125 to shut their door from live music in the last 12 months, which is more than 15% of all spaces in the UK. A lot of that's been put down to energy crisis and etc. But we've talked a little bit about grassroots music venues on this channel, but 15%, what is it we can do as fans of music, or what is this cause? I mean, Andy, your thoughts on this whole process of grassroots music venues?
I wasn't aware that venues were receiving tax relief from the government, which is a good thing. But obviously, it's got to come to an end. We're sort of 3 years down the line, so I'm not surprised it's coming to an end. But I didn't know that was a policy that was in place. I mean, it's only going to make the situation worse, isn't it? You know, the entrance fees, bar prices, they're all going to go up a little bit, I'd imagine, just to sort of compensate for, you know, the extra revenue lost, or sorry, the extra tax that's going to need to be paid on income and everything. But venues as a whole, I mean, we were talking just before we started about a particular local gig that we may or may not go to this coming weekend. You know, a few years ago, probably before COVID, if a band from the local scene was playing at one of our local venues, doesn't matter who else was on the bill, 9 times out of 10 I'd have probably gone. Now I'm much more selective. I'm kind of giving these sort of shows half a thought when they're sort of promoted on Facebook or wherever. You know, I'll mark it as interested. I'll note it down on my calendar, but I'm not going to anywhere near as many shows. And it's not just the ticket price; it's the whole sort of package of heading out for a gig. I mean, most of our venues that I go to are pretty close, within half an hour's drive, 20-mile drive or whatever. But it's sort of £6 for a beer.
Yeah,
similar price if you have the equipment in Coke, you know, as a soft drink or whatever. So, and you feel that you should have a drink per set. That's usually how I approach the show. So 4 bands, you're gonna have 4 drinks, which is £20 plus on top of everything else you spent. So that's the main thing for me. I mean, the quality of the shows and the bands that are on, no decrease there in sort of standard. You know, still some great gigs going ahead. And it's a real shame that I can't go or choose not to go to all the ones that I would normally go to. Again, we touched on it before, David, in our chats. There does seem to be, what's the word, sort of a microcosm of bands that always play. You know, they might be playing a little bit too often, which again would affect how many times I go and see them. And then we also, to compensate that, out of town headliners come in, and they're disappointingly appreciated by the venue, in as much as not many people watch the headliners. You know, time's getting on. They might be going up. People might be going home to catch a train. It's just a shame that they're not more well attended, but there's so many factors as to why that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there trying to think about this because I read a couple of lines. So one of the lines in here says that venues must and will close as a result due to the rates not getting the rates relief, and even more local communities will lose their access to live music, which is a great way of putting it. But then currently they have access to live music but aren't using it. So we're saying you're going to lose it, but obviously people don't give a crap enough to actually attend the shows. So I'm kind of in the mindset of like you. So if I was thinking about expendable income, I've got gig ticket price, whether that's £7-8. Let's say I'm going to average it as 10, just because you never know what gig you're at. But let's say a tenner, 4 or 5 drinks at £5 each. Averaging it out, so you're saying about another 25, so 35. Probably going to get some food on the way up there, takeaway from somewhere that's gone up in price as well. So I'm going to say on an average you're spending somewhere close to almost 50 quid, give or take.
And as a
and
couple,
if you do that twice,
yeah,
you do that twice a month, so you can go to 2 gigs a month, which means if this venues are playing gigs 7 nights a week, you're out of a potential 30 gigs, you're going to 2. So there's a whole range that these venues aren't doing. Now, we have seen, especially like rock and metal, the attendance figures are much lower for those gigs. And I've asked the question about this before, about why it is. And we think that a lot of the problem is that a lot of the guys that watch the rock and metal bands are in rock and metal bands, which means they have the additional outgoing of rehearsal costs. They're rehearsing themselves. They're playing gigs somewhere else, so they can't go. And I was reading a piece by Rage from Kane. He posted a comment today on or a post on his Facebook. He was talking about one of the gigs that he did last year and how about what slot he was in gig, and bands were literally just turning up, playing their slot, and then pissing off afterwards. Which means they're not really promoting the show. They're not promoting it as one of their gigs, and I think there's an element there within this factor that because. None of these gigs would be or venues would be closing if people were going to the shows. It's not down to the government to give tax relief to these venues to keep them open. It's for people to attend. I don't think ticket prices are the issue, not for grassroots venues. I mean, compared to paying like £7,500 to go see Metallica, how many local gigs could you go and see instead of Metallica? And they'd be bloody better than Metallica. Come on. Metallica aren't bad, but I've seen some. Technically, there are some amazing local bands that you can go and see for 7 or 8 quid, and you get 4 bands on a bill, and yet we still can't get people through the door. I think, beer prices is one thing. Maybe the government, in some sort of way, should make beer at home really expensive. Make it like it's £6 a can of beer or something to drink at home. Make it 3 quid in the venues. Make it so that it's actually cheaper to go to the venue than it is to buy a case of beer and take it home with you.
So that's the other factor of of time moving on and society moving on. I never used to drink at home when I was a sort of teenager, early 20s. Very, very, wasn't available as much. The multi packs, you might be able to buy single cans at whatever price, but it compared to a draft pint in a pub, it is better to go out. Yeah, and you mentioned Rage Sadler from Kane. I mean, he's a real champion for grassroots music. He's worked so hard with his band, and he often posts about how people have tried to, knock him down and sort of dampen his success by saying, "Oh, why do you bother still? The scene's dead. People don't go to shows. You're better off in a covers band," all this kind of thing. But he's just completed a tour with his band, and it's been a success. They've turned a profit, sold loads of merch, got their name out there again. And when I attended the Kane show at Cambridge, like yourself, a few weeks ago, he was there watching the support band.
Yeah,
he probably watched Riot Act after they played, even though he's probably seen them half a dozen times before that night. We need more guys like him in the scene, pushing it forward. Working hard in his band and sort of, really getting grassroots music up on the ascendancy again.
Yeah, it was interesting because we did that interview with Aaron Stainthorpe the other night, 2 nights ago, wasn't it? And there was the question we said is why do we think 90s metal never took off? And I jokingly said beforehand, yeah, it did, before we actually started the interview. And then when you asked the question, or when Kirk asked that question, straight away in my head, I went, I know exactly why it didn't. But of course, at that point, I was not involved in that part of the interview. But I could sit there and I could go, you could talk about how My Dying Bride took off in Germany, but really never got into the charts because it was all about the record labels. But we had a problem here in the UK. It was called Britpop. It was called Oasis, came out in 1991, and Blur. And we had the Britpop invasion. So we had all those bands doing Britpop or Brit rock, or whatever you wanted to call it, which was only in the UK. That there was no such scene like that in America. So we had that, and that took over our charts, which made metal just got completely shut out because we had this a completely separate genre. And if you actually look at all the tribute acts, what is the one tribute band currently going through Club 85 that sells out straight away and keeps getting extra nights? Oasis.
Yeah.
Because it's still such a phenomenon, that scene is still a massive part. Blur's just come back on the scene, and I think that's the biggest problem for rock and metal within the UK is the American bands and the European bands are still seen bigger than the UK bands. We still look, and I think Aaron Stainthorpe said the same thing. It's the British mentality of the foreign bands are always the bigger things, and we latch onto them. And I think that's probably one of the reasons with grassroots bands and rock and metal bands, we don't give them the time because we just see it as the guys that play in the garages and play in the local rehearsals. We don't take them as seriously, even though if we know they've put multiple albums. Like we've got Nick Plews with Cage Fight, who's out there, he's on the scene, they're doing their tours, and we still go, it's just Nick Plews, he's the geezer from the Club 85. We don't think of him as a significant band of any sort. We just kind of go, it's Nick Plews, great drummer, good laugh, always has a funny story to tell.
And we always badger him to try and get Cage Fight at Club 85, but then
exactly
perhaps beyond that, no offence to anybody involved, but it'd be great. But he's that band sort of next level now, isn't it? Yeah. And all best wishes to them. I think they're great.
But I think the only way to get people for door, you can't lower prices on the door because that has a direct impact on overall cost. You could make it for venues that venues aren't allowed to take merch cuts, which luckily in the local scene it tends to be generally not a big thing anyway. Yeah. But that gives the band some sort of credit there. But to get people to physically get through the door, you've got to make it an incentive to leave the house, which means what's your other reason? So venues should be doing movie night type things, and if you've got a big screen on the stage and you haven't got a band on that night, why don't you have a cool movie night? Make it as a social venue for that sort of clientele, and then you do. I still reckon if the government were to turn around to say live music venues, if you're a live music venue, you don't have to pay any tax on any of the alcohol that you serve on site. Yeah. Then you can lower the prices at the bar, and suddenly you would find that actually you could get a pint for £2, and you'd be like, fucking hey, yeah, I'd actually come out for a night out.
Yeah, I think another sort of slight change in the format and the sort of structure of the gigs at our local venues. I don't know how it's replicated across the country, but there hasn't been many shows that I've been to where it's not 4 bands, half-hour sets, maybe a bit longer for the headliners. I'd prefer 3 bands, something like 45-minute set, hour for the headliner, something like that.
Yeah,
and then and obviously the lineup would have to be absolutely no, wouldn't it? It'd have to be one of those bands would be on my fan list, and I might be surprised by the other 2. I might sort of come away liking being involved in following yet another band. But
that's the other issue.
That might something that might sort of get me out of the house more often. Put it that way.
I think also the same. We see a lot of the same bands in our scene anyway. We see a lot of the same bands coming round the same venues too often. So I'm more inclined to if they were playing it once every 6 months, I'm more likely to go to see them each time. But if you play them once every 2 or 3 months, I'm like, I'll catch you on the next one. There's no urgency for me to go and see them because I've seen it. I know this. I know what the set's going to be. I know. I could probably tell you the set order or what they're going to play at that point. So you don't want to see the same people all the time playing on the same bills. You want to see a bit more variety, and that's where bands keep playing the same circuit rather than branching out. And it's good to actually see a couple of bands I've seen on our Facebook groups and stuff, like Elysian Divide have played some new venues outside of their normal catchment, which is great to see bands like that stretching out. We saw Silverhex went over to Bulgaria and played some shows over there, so that was great to see them moving, not just playing the Horn in St Albans, which just keeps appearing like we're playing this gig here or something, or the Cart and Horses in Stratford. Yeah, it's another one. But
you had Cambridge punk rock band For the Hornets as making their debut overseas. I think they played in Denmark a couple of weeks ago at a festival.
Oh, okay.
You know, great experience for them, I'm sure, and you know they'll be striving like the other bands to sort of get out there again. So, but yeah, that's the next step, isn't it? You know, you go from your local circuit to the likes of sort of Leicester and Birmingham and a bit further north. Trillions at Newcastle keeps coming up on the social medias as a venue that bands play, and then maybe get a European slot or a little festival or a little run of shows with somebody else. You know, that'd be fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what this report doesn't say. It tells you that 125 closed. It didn't tell you how many new ones opened though, because there are always like the 6-6 bar opened 2 years ago. I've seen that Millstone's playing a show with Own Your Life, and they're going to be doing the debut show of a new venue. So we're not hearing about the new venues opening. We have heard about the ones closing. So it'd be nice to know about these new venues, because there's no really real way of telling you about what's opening until you hear about a band promoting it. So I actually don't know what the point of this video was today, apart from to talk about Grassroots music. But if any of the topics we've talked about or any things that have rung a bell with you or rung an accord, let us know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the video sometime very soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.